There is a website called AmericanRhetoric.com. Okay, remember that, AmericanRhetoric.com. And in this website, there is a link called Top 100 Speeches. Click that link, and you will see the top 100 speeches ranked from the last century in this nation, as ranked by 146 scholars, I remember. So if you click this link, top 100 speeches, number one is Martin Luther King's well-known I Have a Dream speech. Just read any passage, and you'll see Shakespeare in Martin Luther King. Read this passage. But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. Do you see Shakespeare here? Slings and arrows. The slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. The manacles of segregation, chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. Martin Luther King did not simply say, the Negro is still suffering segregation and discrimination. 100 years later, we're still suffering poverty amidst prosperity. No, he didn't say that, because if you see that way, you lose all the image. Your readers and listeners don't see the vitality of your message. And then he learned from Shakespeare, manacles of segregation, chains of discrimination, lonely island of poverty, and vast ocean of prosperity. And then immediately segregation, discrimination, poverty, and prosperity become alive. That's imagism. So that we learn from Shakespeare, imagism. So don't simply see unlucky life, see the slings and arrows of unlucky life, or outrageous fortune. So that's one trick. Or to take arms against. Probably you'll see, I'll fight. Fight is not as vivid to the eye of the reader as take arms. It becomes to think of weapons, guns, and swords, arms. Or take arms against a sea of troubles. We see a large number of troubles. It's not as good as a sea of troubles. And by opposing, end up to die, to sleep no more. And by sleep, to see we end the heartache and 1,000 natural shocks, and the flesh is heir to. If you say instead, what would you say? What would you say instead of Shakespeare's language? Well, if you're describing the suffering of life, what would you say? The human flesh, the human body has to suffer. Max, how would you say it if you're saying the same thing? Try to forget Shakespeare, okay, for a moment. But
which Max?
Oh, we have multiple Maxes here. The Max 1, whose face I'm seeing. Yeah.
Okay.